Are you looking to start your own business? Then this is the series for you. Today, we're going to be talking about the assumptions we made when we started our businesses, what the reality is like, and then we're going to finish it off with the fundamental components to starting your own business. And if you want to learn a little bit about us and why we got started in our businesses, definitely check out the previous episode last month. You'll get to learn a lot more about us. My name is Diana Lizarazo, and my co-host Said and Matt Goddard. Matt, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing yourself?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks so much for coming on. Let's start with just telling the viewers a little bit about yourself.
I'm Matt Goddard. I've been around business most of my life. Now I work as a consultant for small business owners. I also do real estate investment and real estate management. And I co-host this amazing show with you.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah. And for me, I have same thing. I started a renovation business with my partner. I got into real estate investing, and now I'm creating an application, a mobile application. So we've got lots of experience here to share of our experiences. So I am excited. So let's start with the first one. And I think this happens to a lot of us, where we come with these preconceived notions of like what it is to start a business. So tell me, what are yours? Assumptions.
Uh,
What are your assumptions?
yeah. Many. When we go to start a business, we might not necessarily know much about business. Some of my first preconceived notions, some of my assumptions, was thinking that if I knew how to do a thing, I knew how to run a business doing a thing. Um, and they're definitely two different. They're definitely two different
And yeah.
things.
Yeah, it's very true. It's sometimes a lot of us think like, oh, we're technical, we're experts in this, and that's all you need to run a business. So I feel like that's definitely a big one out there.
Yeah, 100%.
And
But
with
it's only
that,
one part.
actually,
It's
I
only
feel
one part.
like, sorry, I was just gonna say, with
Yeah.
that, I also feel like that other assumption where you're like, oh, it's easy because like that, I'm an expert in something, that specific thing, and I'm gonna run a business in that. So that means that it's gonna be easy to
Yeah.
create this business and run this business. So I feel like that's a second assumption that also comes up.
Yeah, 100%. I like whether so for me, the first business I ran was renovations. I knew a lot of handy work. I knew how to, you know, paint and drywall and fix things. And I was quite confident in my skills. And I think your first business was in renovations too, but your background was also in is it what, computer science or
I
programming
was
or
an electrical engineer, yeah, and computer.
electrical
So,
engineer?
so
Yes.
nothing related. So it's funny because
Nothing
mine was
related, right?
definitely not like I did not feel an expert, but I had an
Yeah,
expert on the team
right.
that, which I think is an interesting dynamic in mine. Um, yeah, I think so. We'll talk about that more, but yeah, I think that is an interesting dynamic because I didn't feel like an expert, but I definitely can say like I had a lot of trust in my partner. I
Mhm.
just knew like how he worked and how he got things done,
Right.
but still not easy, right? So I feel like for me, I didn't have that complex of like I feel like an expert and it's easy to run a business, but I had the complex of like, oh, because I have an expert on the team, it's gonna be super easy, right?
Right. Like we can do the activity, we can do provide the service, um, and all we have to go do is provide that service. But there's a lot of steps in between. Um, there's a whole sort of infrastructure and system there that needs to be considered.
Which actually, that's a very good point because I feel like another one that then comes up is, or at least with me, I felt was like not thinking a salesperson or a marketing team or sales team is that important. I kind
Yeah.
of placed a lot more value, kind of what you're saying, with the expert. I'm like, he's an expert. So how hard is it to bring in
Right.
clients? You know,
If you build it, they'll come.
if you build it, they'll come. Yeah. Any other one
Um,
that you can think?
uh, for me, I think one of the other assumptions was you know, as long as we're getting the work or the service done, um, that's, enough. But part of that work and part of that service is a lot of that back end admin, um, whether it's communicating with the clients, keeping people updated, uh, and just administrative work. That's really where endeavors can, can die,
Mhm.
uh, if you don't have a lot of that
Yeah.
sorted out.
I feel like actually that's probably, I would say, where majority of people fail is because especially when you have that hatred for the administrative stuff, it really kills, I feel like, your mojo, that motivation to do things,
Yeah,
right? Especially if you're not a paper-oriented person, especially, I feel like it just like really kills it for you. So it's that I feel like that definitely is just like, oh, why me?
100%. And it's not something that people want to do. And so um, people put it off and put it off. But it gets so much harder the more you kind of put those small details off. Um, Especially if you're focusing on other stuff because we're not perfect. We forget things and it just makes things harder.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
And one that
Um,
happens to me, another assumption that I
yeah.
feel like happened to me, not in my renovation business, but when I had like more of the failures, these little ones,
Yeah.
was um me being like, I can do it alone. I don't need other people
Right.
to run a business. And the impact in so many different ways actually that having people around you, having teams or whatever. Like there's so many different types of even people I feel like that I realized after the fact that are so important to like help to
Yeah.
run the
Yeah.
business.
100%.
And even
Um,
people like not in the business. Like I just like sometimes like a support system, like sometimes you get to these like, oh my God, why is life so hard? And you have someone to just like bounce ideas off or even just get like some sympathy. Like I just need someone to like cry with me, put the sorrows in.
right. Right. Well, and I
Feel
think
my
it's easy
pain.
to kind of, yeah, exactly. I think it's easy to end up doing that because you kind of back to one of the first things, it's if you come in thinking it's easy, and in essence, lots of things about business are easy in isolation when not considering other stuff.
Mhm.
Um, is it easy to take, this information and from this sheet and, you know, input it over here? Well, yeah, I mean, I can read, that's easy enough, and I can write, that's easy enough. Uh, so in isolation, a lot of these tasks and things are relatively easy,
Yeah.
but it's not, and you don't have time to do everything.
Or
Um,
amazing at what you do. Like when you're the expert, that
yeah,
stuff is easy. But the
yeah,
other stuff is generally, I guess, why we say it's like we think it's easy because we're like, oh, we're an expert in this, or we have an
yeah,
expert with us.
yeah,
Like, but don't realize, oh, there's so much other stuff involved.
yeah. I can design a logo. I can come up with a name. I can come up with
How
slogans.
hard is it to create a
How hard?
post?
Yeah. Oh, bookkeeping's easy. Oh, I can make that phone call, no problem.
Oh, just
Um,
having that one receipt in, no big deal. Like I feel like
yeah,
but it is just one receipt, but again, if you don't have those habits in place and then you put them off, like we are talking about, oh,
yeah,
what a mission and the most annoying things to deal with.
yeah. Yeah. I, I'm just imagining. I've made some of these. I've made some of these mistakes, right? And so it just makes me. It reminds me of times where you're kind of going through receipts, and
Yeah,
receipts don't last forever. And
yeah.
so, like, that one
It's bring
receipt that's
on,
like been in your glove box for a couple extra months more than it should have is like super faded, and You got to hold it up to
It's
the
the
light just
light.
right.
I've been
Like
there
that.
too. We're just
Yeah.
like,
Which card is that? How much money is that? I don't know.
you're like, is that a six or an eight? Could that be
Yeah.
a three or a seven? You know, like you're
Yeah.
just I had a one time where the itemized things were still there, the total wasn't. So I literally had to like just add it up, do the taxes. I'm like, this sounds like that's probably what the total was, you know?
Yeah. Like this needs to be right. That looks right.
Yes.
You become a little archaeologist of like things you forgot to do in the past of your own life. You're like, where was I at five
Yeah.
o'clock on
Oh my God,
January
calendar,
3rd?
right? When you don't
Yeah.
track everything in your calendars, I feel like even that was became a big thing for me because like that you see a receipt or um writing on the receipt sometimes like for this
Yeah.
project for that project like these like quick little notes because you like that like you go back and you're like at least if you have a project you're like what did I do in the project and those are easier to remember because the bigger
Yeah.
projects are bigger and then it's like okay now that makes sense why I bought these things or whatever and then you can like itemize it in your expense report or not itemize it but I mean you can explain it better in your expense report.
Yeah. Yeah. Even my notes on it sometimes, they make sense at the time, but then they don't make sense later on. I've gone through like again, this is still on receipts. I've gone through where um I had to pick something up a little impromptu, let's say. So I ended up purchasing it myself and having to reimburse myself. And so on the receipt, I put all the right details, but then I go, Matt paid. Uh, but without context, is that Matt paid for it and needs to be reimbursed, or Matt paid for it and he has been paid back. And so I'd go back and
Try to
go through and
consolidate.
yeah, so sometimes it's like apparently that means Matt has been paid, and sometimes that means Matt needs to be paid. And so it's like good logic there, Matt.
Yeah. You're like, okay, gotta fix that one for next time, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, same thing. I remember actually generally I hate because I've had same thing situations where it's like whatever the reason is, I don't even remember why, but you just pay out of pocket yourself instead of doing it through the business. And
yeah,
then like that, I've gotten to a point now where those things sometimes happen where I like automatically in the Excel sheet, I put a comment in that like fully explains it because I hate when it's like you have this itemized thing because it's also itemized and it just says bank accounts. And I'm like,
yeah,
no, what happened? Because I know it's like, okay, now that came from me because it came from a bank account, not a credit card or like
yeah.
an actual like statement from a store, which is like what I like. I like to see stores, like Home Depot, perfect. Probably material
Fantastic.
purchase, right? You're just like, you see things that you're just like, this is what that means. Like a quick, right? Whenever I see bank, it's like the scariest thing in the world for me because I'm just like, oh my God, what did I buy? And why is it a bank transaction? Because now I have to like actually remember what was the purpose of that thing. So
Yeah,
I got so good at like, okay, comments get put in immediately for those ones. Other ones I won't care about. But when it comes to a bank transaction where I know I'm paying myself back or having to pay someone else back, I
yeah,
like literally that like that day, that month, I'll put those ones in. Because like you said, you forget completely.
yeah,
Like a month goes by, especially if you have many projects on the go. Who is going to remember that? Like you'll be like, yeah, what did I pay myself for? What was the purpose of it or whatever? It just gets so much more
yeah.
complicated.
I've definitely gone into rants about uh how the banks decide to you know describe transactions in your bank statements. Point of sale usually not bad. Anything else, like you have no idea what they might put in there.
Hmm.
You do a check, it might say cash. You do uh, a transfer from one account to the other, it might not say that. It might be some code or some other thing. It's just complete chaos. Anyway, I'm
Yeah.
not going to go down that rabbit hole.
Clearly, I
These are
think
assumptions.
a
These all fall
point
under
for us
assumptions. We
is
thought it'd be
receipts are a
easy.
little annoying.
We thought it would be easy. We didn't think we'd have to be detectives or archaeologists trying to decipher some sort of uh, code from another organization.
Especially because when you go to your accountant, it's like is it a capital expense? Is it just a regular maintenance expense? I mean, let's say in the real estate side, right? Like you have to
Yeah.
itemize it. And then so it's funny because you're just like sometimes, for example, like you said, like you get this obscure number on the receipt of like just numbers and letters. You're like, what the hell is that? And then you search
Right.
it and it's like a modeled number for a fridge. Oh, appliance. Okay, it's an appliance thing. Like
Yeah.
I have to, because those kind of things are important. Like you have to label it as appliance because that gets, categorized differently. Like that'll be probably, I actually don't even know. I assume it's a capital expense. The accountant knows.
Yeah.
I know that
Something
like
like
there's
that.
certain things where I make sure I label what it is, because like for
But
example,
the
that's
same
probably more of a
thesis.
capital expense, and that gets charged differently than a
Yeah.
maintenance does,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, so sometimes those things are annoying. So like, what the hell is that random number displayed on this receipt? Like, how am I supposed to know what the hell that is?
Exactly. And you can't search any of it. Google
Mhm,
doesn't help you usually.
mhm.
Sometimes it does, but if you're like, oh, product number this from Home Depot. No, no, no. But nothing shows up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so
Anyway,
receipts clearly are a big deal for even the both of us. So
I
probably the
think so, yeah.
also needs to probably make it a big deal for them too. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
because
mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about business. The essence of a business is commerce, is moving of funds and money and transactions, right? So that's probably why we're talking about it so much because you need to understand where money's going and where money's coming from and be able to account for that, be able to track that.
Mhm.
Because
And
that's
it's, yeah.
kind of the point. I don't want to say that is the whole point, but it's
It
definitely
is very important for sure. Because I
very
mean,
important.
that shows you like how much taxes you're paying at the end of the year.
Exactly.
It's like how much money you've made, like just shows you it is. It becomes so important when you put all the money side of things. It just shows you like where you stand in the business, where you have to improve in the business, like even strategizing for the next year, how I can like not pay so much in taxes and
Yeah.
make better decisions and all these things. So I guess
Are
it's
you
also
using your
that it
time
does become a big
wisely?
deal.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were
Okay.
saying something?
I was saying, are you using your time wisely?
Are you using your time wisely? Yeah. And then actually, so let's even talk about because I feel like this kind of goes in the same like or at least I said, like the importance of marketing and sales. Now I think
Yeah.
this is like in a bigger sense of different types of businesses where same thing for especially I think it happens with experts who just like you said, build it and it comes, but it becomes so fundamental. And I think even now, because we're so digital, even
Yeah.
more like just that brand awareness, for example, becomes so important that you get like if you are not posting regularly or you're not posting regularly or you don't have a social media, you almost like right there lose some credibility, to be honest, because they're like, if they can't, it's like almost like if they don't do that, then they can't be a real business or something. I don't know. I feel like
Yeah.
some credibility is there and important to at least have something there.
I think you kind of touched on it right when one of the first things you said there, which was in this, whatever, let's say in this day and age where things are more digital. Um, it's not like it used to be where if you were a contractor, let's say, and you had an office in your hometown and all your clients are from your town and so everyone sees your sign on the main street and everybody knows each other and that's how you provide your services and that's how you're able to find clients because you're servicing your neighbors and your friends. um, it's not really like that for service now.
Well, it is like I think for specifically in this thing that you said, like word of mouth, it is, let's say, of value for when it
Yeah.
comes to trade, for sure.
Yeah,
But
it's a
that
value.
credibility, like they're always gonna go, like, what are the reviews? They're gonna always check the Google reviews. They're gonna check the social media because they like now it's like a part of the vetting process. Like it's
Yeah.
not
Well, and this is, I think, part like this is a general statement, but your market that you're going to service and is probably larger than in the past, and like you don't necessarily know your clients beforehand, and they don't know you beforehand. And
Especially
maybe your
growing.
office is in your home, and
Mm.
so there's no frontage on the street. So like the the front window of your store and your sign ends up being online, which ends up being social media or
Mhm.
your website or just your digital footprint
That's
as a whole.
yeah, very true, very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like another part to the vetting process that's needed. Or like you said, even if you don't know, because like you said, as you're growing your business, or if your business, like there are lots of businesses now, which is basically you're saying that like you don't have to be your neighbor that you're giving business to. Now you can go
Yeah.
like within the country if you want to, or it could even go globally. Like there's
Yeah,
depending
depending on the
on
service
the
you're providing, right? Or for me, uh, I've, I do real estate, so I've had properties in different towns that I don't necessarily live in. If I need work or I need to find contractors or other professionals, lawyers, accountants, stuff like this, um, I'm new to the neighborhood. I don't know anybody.
yeah.
So my only point of first contact ends up being a Google search or a search on Google Maps. Um, and that's where I need to start because I don't know who else to talk to, right?
Yeah, and at least it gives you like a direction or like that you see
Yeah.
social media, you start checking them out, on social media. Like you just start, yeah, it's true. You just start a whole vetting process. And to
And
add
I
on,
think the assumption that people make is that so the assumption is that people think that that stuff isn't necessarily important. Let's just get started with everything else. But it's hard to have a business come to you or find you if you don't have that stuff.
yeah, like it's all about searchability now. Like they want to be able to find you online. It's like that. It's a check mark. And if you don't have it, it could be quite a big check mark. It could be something that's just like, oh, they're not online. There's something wrong with them. I don't know what it is for them not to be online and done.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then the other thing I wanted to talk about is how we started the marketing is also like the sales side. I think one of the hardest things people not don't like to talk about money or don't know how to sell
Yeah.
because for example you're an expert in like your trade or whatever it is that you do which is not related to selling and that skill either needs to be learned because I think to be honest even if you're not going to be the full salesperson on the company to be honest you're always selling yourself. So I feel like even in the general sense, something that I feel like I've learned is that you still should learn the skills of selling because you're always going to be talking to many different type of people that may not be fully a customer, but they could be a connection or they could be this and you're still having to learn to sell yourself. So I feel like I
Yeah.
feel like the skills to be honest, I feel like are
Well, and
become a must.
yeah, and I agree with you. And I think another way to look at it, um, if selling yourself is not like people, it's not the most, let's say, flattering sounding thing, right? But what we're saying is more like um, the ability to communicate
Yes.
how or in what manner you may be able to do business with somebody,
Mhm.
right? Like it's about communication. It's about um, communication relating to doing business with somebody, and whether you can be of service to them or whether they are maybe a potential customer of yours. Like it's this kind of communication.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point that you say because it's how you communicate. Because I could give you an example. I remember when my partner went to go do a project, and um, the way he said it came off as that he had no experience. And I
Mhm.
can't say exactly what he said because I can't remember, but it was along the lines of he said, oh, my go-to is this guy for, let's say, tiling.
Yeah,
And he took it as, why are you tiling? my floors if you have no idea how to tile? Like, so he must have said it in a way that made her lose confidence in him. And he meant it as in, like, if I can't get it done in time, I got another guy that can, like, help me, let's say, finish it
Yeah.
off. Or if I have a big project, like, I got more people behind
Yeah.
me, right? So
Like
it's,
it's not just me, it's a team.
yeah. So it's just like those kind of communication skills. And to me, like, that's like you're always selling, right? To me, those
Mhm.
kind of communication skills are so important because like that, like people interpret what you say in different ways. Because also something I've noticed is we talk a lot in our head and not everything comes out verbally, you know? And so
Yeah.
sometimes that like is where that mistranslation happens because you think that you said something and you kind of finish off the rest with them. And then so their mind is somewhere else and they interpret it differently. So it's like that
Yeah.
communication becomes so important and so pivotal because you can scare a client or a potential client or potential
Yeah.
partner, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. 100%.
One of the things that I think is really important is also to be able to run a business is being okay with failure, right? Because you will
Yeah.
make those mistakes, right? You'll say something that just doesn't go the right way. Maybe the tone was wrong. Maybe the words were wrong. Maybe you just, like who knows what's wrong in it. Maybe yeah, like just something was wrong. And you have to be okay with like not only okay with failure, but assessing and learning. Like you have to
Yeah.
be an entrepreneur. My God, starting a business is like you have to be okay with adapting and evolving and not getting really so hurt or at least bouncing back from
Yeah.
those hits that come up.
Well, there's 100%.
Yeah, the failure, willing to adapt and learn, I think is so pivotal. And I think to be honest, it's like I would say it's the number one thing that everyone needs to be prepared for. I think to be honest, that's where failures happen. Like actual failures and a failure in the sense like the business just doesn't happen. And a very example that I think hit us all hard, and so I think this will hit home, is when COVID happened. When COVID happened, we saw restaurants and businesses that were going out of business. And the ones that survived were the ones that were willing to be like, this is a new environment we're in. How are we going to make the business work? What do I need to do to change, evolve, and adapt to make this happen? And the ones that had no interest and were just like, I had one friend where um, their business was a pub and they're like, we can't do anything about it. Like we just have to be closed. Now, luckily they have tons of money, so they could stay closed for I think 6 months. Like they were bleeding money, but they were fine with it. But they were for 6 months just there and they were bleeding money and shut down. And another business would not be able to just be shut down for 6 months, right? They would have lost their business. So, I mean, some if you have a lot of money, you can kind of be stubborn about and go, but you gotta, I feel like almost have to have unlimited funds for something like that. But if you want to be a true entrepreneur, that your business will last, you have to be willing to like that. Accept the failures that come in. Okay, this is a failure because a failure is not an end. You have to move forward, right? And then learn from it. And I feel like this is kind of weird, is actually the learning from ourselves and finding ways, like everything's, for example, digital. So I kind of like, let's say, Zoom, because you can record yourself. It's really weird to watch yourself, but at least you record yourself, you watch yourself. Let's say the first few is really uncomfortable. And let's say a conversation or whatever you're having, if you're having meetings, if you can do it, if there's a way that you can put something where you can see yourself in it or hear yourself, like let's say maybe recording, uh, it helps you learn a lot more about yourself and figure out how to improve yourself. So, my number one thing that I've really noticed that is really important in running a business, at least with me, is really the importance of being okay with failure, being able to learn and adapt to these failures and figuring out how to solve them. And one of the things actually I feel like which I think will bring this home nicely, at least to me, uh, that I think people really get. I feel like COVID was a really great example of that. It's like when COVID happened, like everything, like the people who adapted and changed, and I'd say like specifically
Yeah.
obviously restaurants, because I feel like they were the biggest impacted, was I remember like some of that, for example, like the pubs, right? Like I remember I have a friend that owns a pub and he's like, we don't do takeout. Who's going to buy pub food? And luckily, this guy's loaded with money. So he just stayed closed and did nothing for 6 months or however long it was.
Yeah.
But the people that aren't loaded with money, they shut down, right? And the other ones that were like quick, like, okay, I have a problem. How do I solve it? What can I do? Those people made so much money actually because like everyone was so stressed that even lots of people were, I don't think a lot of people were cooking because I know another person that had a restaurant and they had um never had so much. I mean, yes, they've never had so much takeout, but they've never had made so much money during COVID.
Right.
Even when they had like you could come in to dine in to eat and they had takeout, they made so much money. So it's just like when you're willing to just be like, we have a problem and we have to evolve, figure it out, adapt and change to the new times. Like that's where I think really the biggest, like this is where people win is when you have that mindset where it's just like you're willing to evolve. And I think real estate is a big example of that too, right? Like
Yeah.
see the market's
100%.
this and we're like we're having to go with it too. And if you can't go up or I mean you can do the up but you can't do the down, like you won't be ready for that next up, you know?
Yeah. 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 I think it's nothing, not to get too woo-woo, but nothing in this world's static, right? Things change. There's different influences that change uh, constantly in every industry. And if you don't change the way you approach things, you're setting yourself up for failure, right? The equation has changed on you. The outcome's going to change. And so if you don't work with some of these variables, you're not going to get the result you want.
Mhm.
Um,
You won't last very long, that's for sure.
and you
And I
won't
think
last very
again,
long,
we're
right?
seeing it right now, right? Like there's government policies and regulations changing, like tariffs and all this
Yeah,
stuff. Like everyone is just like, we have to adapt. We have to figure out like what is it like. Some stability would be nice, like make a decision, right? So
yeah,
we can
yeah,
actually start figuring out things at least.
yeah. Well, and like you hear about it a bunch in the news that people like stability, and that's kind of the same thing that goes hand in hand, right? People like stability because they've done some calculations, they've done calculus in their head, and the less they need to change that, the more at ease they are. Um, but if you don't change it, when the calculation changes, then
Um,
you're
or
gonna have
if it's
problems.
static for too long, I feel like when it's too much time where you're used to the same thing,
Yeah,
uh, changing to new habits do get a little hard. Actually, I feel like in the real estate side, I guess that's why things are just like always up and down and always changing. I
yeah,
feel like our spans are probably, it seems like the spans are, a whole up and down is like a 5 year span. So in there, you're having to adapt and change almost like every 2 years or something because something is having to change that you have to evolve that it kind of keeps you going. But some industries where it's like you've been in it so long, it could be also detrimental because you do get so used to like this way of being that I feel like uh you it's hard to open your eyes to new possibilities because you're just so used to these habits and you've been like 10 plus years doing.
yeah. And I think well, change is hard. The decisions we make are, essentially built on a scaffold of assumptions we've made um, from the information we've gathered. So, you go to the restaurant down the street because you assume that it's going to be good, and you assume you're going to like it, and you assume it's not going to be busy, and you assume you can afford it. When those things start changing, if you don't change your habits or change your choices, then uh, you're going to have a bad time, right? A lot of things we do are just built on some of these assumptions. That's why we were talking about the assumptions. And you won't necessarily know when some of these assumptions have changed until you've maybe had some failure. That's why, back to what you're saying, I think it's important to be okay with some failure because it's through failure where we find out where or how our assumptions have failed us, right? Because we can't know everything.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah. And I feel like it's, it's funny. I was just thinking, I feel like it also becomes almost like a double-edged sword because at the beginning, I feel like you probably do a lot more failing when you're starting a business. But then at that time, you're also, hopefully, if you're really wanting to get in this, you're a little bit more malleable and adaptable. So you're kind of
yeah,
okay with it. Whereas at the same time, I feel like at least with real estate for me, within the amount of time that I've been in it, I feel like I almost, when I remember I used to say like, oh, like how are people so good at predicting things and like how do they know and this and that. But when you're in it, it's not predicting because you see the signs and it's just because you're so in
yeah,
it, you know all the details, you know what's going on, that you see the signs. And so the failures at the same time, if you're willing to adapt and change, you see them, they're given to you.
yeah,
And you just have to be willing to use that
yeah.
information. So
And they're probably just acting faster than you're able to process to change, right?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, sometimes it's like you gotta just go.
Yeah. It's like, oh wow, how'd you know you needed to walk away? I just recognized the pattern.
Yeah.
I changed the assumption I made, and and then now moving forward and doing something.
Exactly. Yeah, you just see signs that exactly. I feel like and it's like these habits are so ingrained in you that you just see it, don't fully understand it anymore because you've just been looking at it so long that you're like, yeah, I just know that I shouldn't do this or I shouldn't have to do this or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I find, yeah. So I feel like it's a double-edged sword because I mean, you do deal with failures, but I feel like if you're starting a business, like that. It's very important to be adaptable
Yeah.
because you get a whole lot of failures. I feel like a lot more.
Well,
Like,
eh, and I would argue that it's going to be a guarantee,
yes.
right? Um, like it doesn't mean you're going to fail amazingly. Uh, but some of the things, the assumptions or or the things you thought you knew will be incorrect, and those will be, small little lowercase f failures, right?
Yeah, they're
And
not
and
like
it's going to
fundamental
happen.
failures.
I would say it's guaranteed, because you're doing something new. So by essence, you're learning, and there's a lot to learn, and there's a lot to find out, and
Yeah. And so
like
actually, this is a good
be
question
patient
for
with it.
the audience is actually what types of things are you needing to learn that you think you need to learn? And we'll be actually listening out now and talking a little bit more about those fundamental components, what we think are fundamental components to the business. So feel free to share with us which one of these you think is something that you need us to deep dive in more or give us your opinions on. So Matt,
Yeah,
start off with so what are the fundamental components for getting a business up and running?
with starting a business. So there's marketing. Marketing is, I think, important. Marketing slash branding. So this is kind of trying to fully understand your your identity and how you're communicating that. So that kind of goes back to how important communication is uh, to the market or your audience.
Mhm.
Um,
Building that purpose, like actually
yeah,
understanding, like
yeah,
who are you serving? What is the product? Like all these different
yeah.
things.
This identity and having a clear and concise uh, picture that you can communicate to
Mhm.
people. That's branding, marketing, maybe a little bit of sales because we're talking about communication. Um, I think that's, one of the most important building blocks.
Yeah, it
Um,
definitely has to be a starting point for sure that you want to put there at the top of the things to get started on for sure. Even this
uh,
would say, right? Depending on what you're doing, because again, like, how are you going to be bringing in that money, right?
Yeah.
And like, you may have lots of limiting money beliefs that you have to get over. Like, one of mine was, I was like, man, I have to buy houses from people, but I hate sales. And I think sellers are scammers. And so for
Yeah.
me, that was just like, even I remember I had questions. I'm like, oh, I don't want to scam people. Like, if this is how this is, like, I don't want to be in real estate, you know? Like, I was like, I don't want
Right.
to scam people. And then so even changing the wording around things and understanding truly what a salesperson is very important. And maybe that's why, like you said, it's really funny because now I feel so comfortable saying sales. But you're right, like there's a lot of people who hate salespeople, and like I'm glad you actually stopped me and be like, oh, it's communication because like that, like people, there's lots of people that have that bad view because there are still some people that sell just to like they don't care about you or like terrible old strategies
Yeah.
out
Uh,
there. And there's so many new ones out there
yeah.
that just really actually, at least at my comfort zone, where it's just like, oh, I'm helping someone. This makes more sense to me. You
Yeah.
know, now
I
I
think a
can,
lot of people see sales as like it's potentially a manipulation or
yeah,
something,
yeah,
where I think the truer definition is not manipulation but communication.
yes.
Um, and I think that's a strong distinction.
Mhm,
And actually, that kind of goes a bit to one of the other kind of fundamental things, which is sort of um, the structure of a business. So organizational chart, ownership structure, uh, these kinds of things, um, they help uh, they help divide up these tasks and give people specific um, tasks so that that communication could be more specific, more intentional. That's why you have sales teams because they want people who are actually communicating intentionally and correctly and with purpose.
mhm.
Um,
And
versus
even if you don't
it's
have a
versus
sales
it's
team,
everyone's job,
yeah,
you know?
even if you don't have a sales team, that structure is good because if you're the
Yeah,
one who's selling, or maybe you at least have a partner that's helping, there's like you're saying clarity behind what's actually happening and what's going on and what you need to do. Because I think that's another big thing that usually becomes a problem is like when you don't have that structure. Like I think that fine balance is really important because with a startup, you need enough flexibility because things are going to be changing and evolving so much as you find specifically where you're good. But having enough of a plan and structure in place that you still have a direction that you know you're going
yeah,
into and at least an idea, a way to find those failures, right? Because if you have at least a high level plan, like you're kind of it's going to help you find where the failures are going to come from so that you can start working on them and be like, okay, that didn't work, so I got to go this way or whatever.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
think that's also, I think, something where people get really stuck on is the big on planners, you know, where it's like they go into full on details, and then they get so discouraged because like nothing is the way it is. They feel like they wasted their time and it just like throws them down really hard. So it's like you want to find like a high enough structure where it's like you're getting a bit of direction, but you're not planning like a year down the road because it's going to be 100% is going to be so different
yeah,
from what you started off in.
yeah. Any specific building blocks of a business that
One of my biggest ones that I think is so pivotal is actually um like finding the communities, like the relationship building in so many
right?
different ways, like finding communities so that one, I mean, so you can see what other people are doing, but also so you can start finding friends that also kind of understand you because it is it like you're that understands you, but also like that can help motivate you, or you can feel motivated by them if you're watching like on social media, if you see them doing things, then sometimes because you go through downers
Yeah,
and that was one thing again before the renovation businesses that I started to try to do little mini businesses. I attribute those failures to not being a part of communities, trying to do it alone, be it by myself, and not realizing that it's not just about finding the clients, or the customers or whatever they are in your type of business. It is actually also about finding a support system. It's also
Yeah,
about having being able to watch people also doing it, hearing about their problems so you can understand it, right? And having friends that you can communicate with and that can
yeah,
actually understand you, because people in your circle currently that aren't entrepreneurs, they don't get it, and they'll either tune out or give you really bad advice. Because and generally the advice is you should probably just get a job, kind of a thing, because this is a lot of
yeah.
work, you know?
I think I think that goes far to explaining like how important it is to recognize that you this is about like you're going to be learning a lot and you're going to constantly be learning. And that's part of not the only reason, like you're not trying to just take from a community or things, but you're learning from other people's experiences. You're able to talk to people who may also uh, have experience or knowledge or done this in the
A
past.
sounding board sometimes. Sometimes
Yeah,
you
or a
just like they
sounding
may
board,
have not
right?
experienced it, but they can bounce ideas. You do a bit of a brainstorming session. Like there's so many uses
Yeah,
besides finding clients, because like my point view was like, oh, you just got to like find people to buy, like to take, like help you like make sales. But if you don't see your pitfalls and what you're doing, which is hard, like generally you need someone else to kind of question you and pull these things out of
yeah,
you. Sometimes it's hard for you to figure out where your failures are coming from, even, or why things are happening because someone else has experienced it, but you haven't. So it's hard to
yeah,
see yourself going through those failures too.
100%. So I
Hmm.
think for our next month
Next months, yeah.
for our next month's video or talk, we're going to talk about some of these building blocks in more depth, the importance of them or uh, what they are specifically.
Yeah, just going more into detail, 100%, and just to give you guys more ideas, more examples of to
Yeah,
understand this better, to really understand the impact that it gives and the importance of it, if you still haven't gotten it. Because we
yeah.
can definitely deep dive a lot more for sure.
Well, there's a thousand different of components that we could talk about running a business, and I
I
think
think it's funny.
our idea here is to just kind of start at the top higher of things and discuss more detail as we go. So
Yeah. Especially because the ones we've talked about are really the ones that are so overlooked and not thought about and learned after the fact. Like that's what it
yeah,
was for me, right? It was just like, oh, this is why I was successful this time around. You know,
most people who succeed the first time by addressing all of these uh, uh, building blocks and having it all perfect, that's not the first time they've tried it. They succeeded the first time in that business, but they have more than likely not succeeded in another endeavor,
yeah.
and they've learned that lesson, and they're now applying that lesson. Um, yeah,
Or someone on your team has
or
failed.
someone on your team.
Right,
Yeah,
because sometimes maybe you haven't failed, but that's because maybe you got lucky or were really good at finding the right partners, and that partner has failed enough, and you're obviously still good enough to listen to understand and be like, oh, okay, he experienced this. We need to find a solution for
yeah,
this. We don't do this next time. Yeah.
100%. So that's what we're going to talk about next time.
Mhm.
But for now, I think that's it.
Yeah, and let us know even if there's some things that you think are important that you want us to talk about. Um, Again, maybe in the not in the next episode, but in future episodes, if there's a specific um component in a business that you really want us to talk about, or even just some other topic in starting a business that you guys want us to talk about, to really touch on, to hear our experiences definitely let us know and we will schedule it in. Matt, thank you so much for coming on. It's always great to chat with you. It's always great to share our experiences and hope that we can help people get their businesses up and running.
Absolutely. Same back to you. I'm gonna head out. I'm up in the mountains at the moment, and I got some exploring to do. So I hope you have a good rest of the day.
You too. Bye, everyone. Bye, Matt.